This is the OverReaction podcast.
Bob, welcome to the OverReaction podcast. How you been?
Oh, pretty good. Just a lot of exciting things happening over here at the company. So glad to be here and talking to you about it.
Nice. Well, let's just jump into it. I mean, you get such a fascinating background. Start there, and then let's get into what you're doing now.
Sure. Yeah, let me just start with who I am. I'm Robert Bunn, the founder of Ultrasound AI. And we're a company that, as the name implies, does AI and ultrasound imaging. Our first product is predicts the delivery date of a baby from the ultrasound images alone. But I'll give you a quick intro to who I am, and then what I can do, I think, is just tell you a quick story to give you the whole background, because there's a lot to decompress here, I think, with this whole scenario and how we got to the point we are today.
Yeah.
So let me just give everyone a lot of context here, and I think the questions kind of lend themselves. So anyhow, about 10 years ago, I was working in the oil industry doing AI research into finding oil, getting the oil to the ground. Obviously, something our society definitely needs, but the oil market, crashed around that time, and I had to do something new, because obviously if people aren't paying for oil, then you got no job. But luckily for me, being a data scientist, AI researcher, programmer, I can go to any industry. But I thought maybe I should switch to doing something more meaningful, because I'd done a lot of contracting jobs as a software developer, and they weren't necessarily meaningful. They might have paid a lot, but they weren't necessarily meaningful in any realistic sense. And so, as it turns out, my wife's had numerous miscarriages, and I got to thinking, well, repeatedly happening seems like an unsolved problem, and I don't understand, why is this problem not solved? And I have no background in healthcare whatsoever, so my knowledge of the situation is zero, and so I wanted to have answers too. And so after doing a little bit of research, I discovered that a good percentage of premature births and miscarriages are surprises. And there's certainly surprises when they would happen, even if they were, maybe considered high risk to begin with, but knowing the when. And so if you don't have accurate and, precise determinations of delivery date or premature birth or miscarriage happening, then you really can't do much to prevent it, because once these things have happened, or, on their way of happening, it's too late.
Yeah.
The train's left the station, and then you just have to deal with the fallout. And so I got to thinking about that problem. So I'm like, well, so basically the problem is that miscarriages and premature births are surprises to the doctors. And that seems to be the biggest problem of all. And so I got to thinking, well, what data, would allow me to give doctors the prediction that they need, and what kind of prediction would actually be helpful. So I got to thinking, well, everyone has ultrasound images, pregnant women, that's very common. They may not have blood testing, but they certainly have ultrasound imaging. And then if I could, in theory, give the doctor an actual delivery date of the baby from the images alone, that would seem almost like the holy grail of obstetrics. And I got to thinking about this, but I talked to a few doctors about this idea, and they told me that, we've been looking at ultrasound imaging for 30 years. If you could just look at an ultrasound image and predict the delivery date, of a premature baby, don't you think we'd already be doing it? And I mean, that's a fair point. I guess they kind of had me on that one. But
one thing I'll interject there has been,
Sure.
I've been in healthcare since 2003. No evidence, no industry that claims to be so based on, evidence-based medicine, for example, pushes so hard against something new. I've been astounded by how in healthcare there's so much initial fight against anything new happening. Maybe they're just so worried about anything new could harm something. So I'm not surprised by.
I have thoughts on that, actually. Yeah. So
yeah,
we can get into that in a little bit, because I have I have thoughts on this, because I've kind of learned this. But yeah, so I went to them, and they said, well, obviously, why wouldn't we be doing that already if it could be done? But as an AI researcher, I know that AI can analyze and learn from millions upon millions of images, which obviously a human would not be able to just look at millions of images to learn patterns in the data to find, things that could predict something. So that was problem number one. So I knew humans couldn't do that, and AI could do that. And also, the human vision and human perception understanding is quite challenging in like ultrasound images, especially where it's really noisy, because we see things that just aren't there, and we might miss things that are there as humans. But an AI wouldn't be fooled by optical illusions is one way to describe it, which is an interesting way to look at these kinds of things. Anyhow, so I just basically set off to figure out an AI that could predict the delivery date of a baby as early as 6 weeks using ultrasound images alone. I figured I might be wasting my time, I guess, but it was such a profound issue and discovery, if it was possible, that I had to at least try. And so I built a supercomputer from parts in my basement by cannibalizing a bunch of old computers, networking them together. It looked pretty scary, actually, but
Wow.
you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah.
And so I got some data and I spent a year trying to create an AI that could predict the delivery date from ultrasound images alone. And after a year, it was failing miserably. And of course, I was beginning to wonder if the doctors might be right. And I'm like, nah, probably not. And so I kept going. And one night it was 1 a.m. and I set off a new experiment. I went to bed and realized by the time I got to bed that I made some really dumb coding mistakes. It was 1 a.m. A little delusional at that point. So I figured I'll just let it run and deal with it in the morning and see what, fix it and then let it go again. Anyhow, I woke up the next morning, it was working. And so that's a common theme in medicine and science is some of the biggest discoveries were completely accidental, just required a lot of persistence to have that luck. I mean, the luck required persistence, but in a lot of it, but like antibiotics and things like that, sometimes it's just, you just eventually you find your own luck, maybe is another way to put it. Anyhow, so it turns out that, at least I convinced myself that you can predict a delivery date using ultrasound imaging alone. And I went back to those doctors and, not to rub it in, but I just, like, okay, it looks like we can do this. So obviously I'm sure you're going to, be interested in this. Anyhow, so they're like, no, you didn't. There's no way. It's just impossible. Sorry, you messed something up. That's just how it is. We don't know what to tell you. Anyhow, so as Carl Sagan once said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And so I had to prove it, independently in a way that no one could question. That's the only way I was going to convince anyone of, because consider how revolutionary this discovery is for this field. It would take some serious research to prove it to the general community. And so I found the University of Kentucky. They, obviously Kentucky has a significant problem with premature birth, and the researchers there were skeptical, obviously, as you can imagine, but they're also dealing with a very serious problem, and they were willing to be a little more open-minded about it, because if what I said was in fact true, the implications would be enormous, especially with their particular hospital's system.
And so how did you come across the University of Kentucky? I mean, you're living in Colorado, so how exactly?
Well, in this world, in the MFM world, is the maternal-fetal medicine, which is a high-risk obstetrician. If anyone doesn't know, it's actually not that big of a community. So if you know one MFM, I found one MFM online, and I told him what I'd done, and he said, that's actually really interesting, but I don't have the data to help you prove it, or not. But if it's true, it's huge. Let me call my friend John over at University of Kentucky, and that's actually a pretty common thing in research. Is people tell people who they know are interested in a particular thing you're doing. So word of mouth is extremely important if you want to find researchers, people who have data or whatever the case may be, or doctors who are interested in your particular subject. That's a good way to make that personal warm introduction and actually get the ball rolling on something that would interest them too. Because someone may not be interested in whatever random topic you might have, even if it is relevant to their field. Everyone's got their own little interests. So anyhow, so yeah, I got we basically trained a data, using their they have a huge data set there, as you can imagine, because the University of Kentucky supplies most of the healthcare for the state of Kentucky. And so their data set was extremely large, and we have a published paper on it. And so what I did was I retrained the AI on their enormous data set, and they held back 20% of the answers. And then we iterated. I created the AI, kept improving on the AI, and then we validated against their 20% holdout, and then we eventually published the pair paper, which proves that you can in fact accurately predict delivery dates, from ultrasound imaging alone.
Wow.
And then, so people stopped asking the question, or stopped questioning that it was possible, because unless you got some more evidence, that we can refute this, I don't know what to tell you at this point, right? And so I think that's all I think that's all doctors really wanted to see, was a peer-reviewed article, from a major and credible university using a very large validation set. I think that scenario, kind of wiped away a lot of the doubt. I think that's all they really wanted to see to begin with, which is fair. And anyhow, so we published the pair paper, and then of course, having a scientific publication is all fine and dandy, adds to your academic street cred, obviously. However, you can't help any patients with that. I mean, you can't cure a miscarriage with a paper, right? So I had to get this in the hands of doctors, and obviously that requires the FDA. And other regulatory agencies around the world, not just the FDA, but in America, it's the FDA, obviously. Talked to the FDA, and we told them what we wanted to get approved, and there's no way they're going to let us file a 510K, which is basically an application that lets you use an existing device as the basis for your own new device. Yeah. They said you're going to need a de novo, and a de novo, they only grant about 40 of those a year. And basically that's a device where there is nothing at all like it on the market to even compare to. So you have to do everything from scratch, all the safety risk profile. Just the amount of work is so much more than a standard 510K, which is the vast bulk of FDA approvals that when people talk about FDA approval, they're almost certainly talking about a 510K in the medical device field. Anyhow, so yeah, so it took a while to convince the FDA that that this is true, because they had the same reaction the doctors did, and then of course they want to see evidence too, and then having a peer-reviewed paper showing it worked obviously helped, but they wanted other analyses done and things that were specific to them, and we had to do a lot of justification of the risk versus the the reward basically of a device. And so that's basically it. We finally, after a couple of years going around with the FDA, we finally got our de novo approval about 6 weeks ago. And so that's obviously a big moment for this company. And I mean, that kind of leads us to where we are now, I guess. So I'm sure I brought up a billion questions with all that, but I'll let you I'll let you proceed with your questions. I think that's enough backstory, at least context, to kind of give everyone an idea of where things are at and how we got here.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. So since it's 6 weeks, what's life been like? I'm sure it's been pretty different.
Yeah. I mean, I told some of my investors I should buy them a t-shirt that said, I was promised FDA approval 24 months ago. And
yeah.
And so, yeah, it's hilariously true, I guess, at this point. I mean, it wasn't hilarious then, but it's certainly hilarious now. But yeah, so luckily we've had a lot of investors, high net worth people, who have been kind of funding this, out of their own pocketbooks, basically directly.
Yeah.
And I've been running this on a shoestring forever. We've only raised about $8 million to get to this point, which is shocking to most people.
Not much.
And so I was going to do it one way or another. So whatever money I could get, I was going to make that work. But yeah, so as you can imagine, after FDA approval, then all of a sudden everything changed. It was like an avalanche all of a sudden of activity. All of a sudden everyone wanted to invest. All of a sudden everyone, how can I use this? How can I get this, get this in my doctor's office so I can use it for my patients? It just all of a sudden, and then of course the media attention just went crazy. I don't know if you Google, ultrasound AI, you'll notice that, the amount of media we've had in the last 6 weeks has just been, mind-boggling compared to what it was prior to that. Sure. I guess no one cares until you can save lives with whatever you've invented, apparently. So, which is fine. I suppose that's fair enough, but that's what happened in this case.
Great. So what's the next 6 months or so going to look like? What type of companies do you think you're going to need to partner with? What organization? I mean, because I would imagine trying to go direct is going to be, a little more difficult. You probably want to partner with the ultrasound OEMs and that kind of thing. So what's that looking like?
Yeah, well, without violating any NDAs,
Of
obviously.
course. Yeah.
As you can imagine, this has attracted attention from the people you might expect it to attract attention from. Maybe I just
Yeah.
like leave it at that. And so yeah, and so but there's also there's numerous ways you could distribute something like this. Obviously, there's the hardware manufacturers themselves, the cart-based ultrasound people, the handheld-based ultrasound people, the PACS people,
Mhm.
there's you can go directly to the doctor themselves. They can just connect their ultrasound machine to our cloud platform directly, so it doesn't matter. Even if we don't have a distributor, doctors can still have access to this. So there's numerous ways to do this. Obviously, the most efficient way is to find someone who has decent market share, and then do some kind of revenue share or whatever
Of
deal you
course.
can make with them. And so yeah, there are a lot of discussions underway. I mean, this all happened only 6 weeks ago, and none of these discussions could take place. All these people we've been talking to for quite a while, but the discussion could not proceed until we had our FDA approval. And so we got our FDA approval, and then everyone, all the insurance companies that we've been talking to, and everyone else, all of a sudden is all right. Let's do this now. It's time to rock and roll. And so now, it's just an avalanche of emails and responding. And how do we do this most efficiently? How do we get this to customers most efficiently? There's just a million questions to answer and a million things to do all of a sudden, which, I'm just right now, we're basically, what we're doing is raising money. Money's coming in really fast now, certainly compared to how it was, as you can imagine. And we're just, the biggest challenge we have right now is the explosive growth, because we've got enormous demand, people asking for it. But our bottleneck is the number of people here who can work through the contracts and do all the business development and sales work that's now necessary to be done. And so we're just trying to ramp up as fast as possible. And that appears to be a common problem with startups, is they get either the big check from the VCs, or some big event happens and then everything changes. And then all of a sudden they have to all of a sudden be a huge company in a week. And
Yeah.
the problem that these startups have, though, is they'll hire anybody with a pulse, and then they end up burning through $50 million in a year and then really accomplish nothing. And then they need more money to keep going or go out of business. So I'm trying to avoid that trap. And so I'm being really focused on who we hire and making sure we're hiring the right people. So we're not stuck in the same situation I see a lot of startups end up in.
Yeah, for sure. So you built your own, your little supercomputer, you moved it to the cloud, et cetera. You were the original developer. When did you start bringing other people in to help on the development side, or did you keep that 100% just to you?
I'm the only AI developer this company's had. We've hired the people to deploy the created models into the cloud and do the cloud work and all that stuff.
Mhm.
But the actual, because I'm more, I could do 100 or 1,000 more products, just like this one, like predicting ovarian cancer and predicting, preeclampsia, and all these things are all doable. It's just I had to get to a point where the proper funding would happen. But as far as your questions, I'm the only AI researcher, and I'm doing a lot of other research besides this first product, because this first product is now a solved problem. Now it's on to the next 1,000 algorithms of things you could predict, and I'm the one working on that. Not because I didn't want to hire an AI, another AI researcher, or we didn't have the money necessarily, even because we do now. The biggest problem is it's really hard to find competent AI developers. Extremely difficult, especially in the Denver metro area where I live. I mean, if I lived in Silicon Valley, it might be a different story, because they might be, everywhere, right? But in the suburbs of Denver, they're not everywhere. There might be a lot of them here, but certainly not like Silicon Valley, right? So it's a lot more challenging, and I certainly don't have the, I'm not Google, I'm not Amazon, I'm not.
Of course.
And so so that's hard. It's hard for me to compete with them too, for the top talent too. So I've kind of had to do the development myself just because of that challenge. But if there's any AI researchers out there in the Denver metro area that would find this interesting, please reach out. For sure. I'd love to have some help in this. But
Yeah. So are there next algorithms that make the most amount of sense for you guys?
Yeah, so basically the next algorithms we're going to be coming out with are the ones that are peripheral to what we just did.
Makes sense.
So predicting why, so the doctor's like, well, this baby's gonna be born a premature birth or miscarriage, why? Am
Yeah.
I going to have to induce to save the life of the mother? Is this going to be is it supposed to be spontaneous miscarriage or spontaneous premature birth? I need much more information. And so the other algorithms that we're going to be coming out soon, obviously given regulatory approval in this country and others, is an algorithm to accurately determine gestational age, which actually I think there are some algorithms on AI algorithms on the market to do that, because that's not super challenging, obviously.
Sure.
But the other ones that are and that our patents cover that are also challenging is predicting life-threatening high blood pressure that would cause a doctor to have to induce, predicting placental abruptions and other conditions, life-threatening conditions that might happen at a certain point. So a doctor will know, well, this person's likely going to get preeclampsia, next month, which will be 2 months early. I need to monitor her for this high blood pressure condition, make sure and start treating her now if there is a treatment for whatever condition they're going to be getting, and then be a lot more prepared if we can't prevent this scenario. And also, not only does this save the lives of mothers, it will save the lives of babies. It'll also save the lives of mothers too, because the algorithm not only can it predict spontaneous premature birth and miscarriages. What we discovered was the AI can also discover when the mother is going to have a life-threatening condition and require the doctor to induce early. So, a mother might get life-threatening preeclampsia, which is high blood pressure, at week 30, and that baby's got to come out. It's 10 weeks early, but there's just no choice in this scenario. And so that baby's coming out, and it turns out our AI can predict that this life-threatening condition is going to be happening. That's going to cause a doctor to induce, which really allowed us to open up a whole new paradigm in thinking about this. Is it appears that many medical events are predictable from ultrasound imaging alone, and not only predictable, not you're at risk for this or risk for that, but this is going to happen to you, in 2 months plus or minus a week. And that's just for something as cheap as ultrasound imaging, and for an AI that AIs obviously operate extremely cheaply too. I think the implications for medicine are truly profound. And just to clarify that the things I'm talking about now, we don't necessarily have peer-reviewed papers out for yet. Some of this stuff we do. Obviously, the paper does cover some of this. And also, I just want to clarify that our indications for use from the FDA certainly don't cover the stuff I'm talking about now. Just to have the appropriate disclaimers on all this. So make sure you understand the indications for use before using it, and all those things. And not all this has been published in a peer-reviewed article yet. Some things I'm talking about, some of it's just internal research. So just to clarify, disclaimer on the things that need them.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think it's great that you're focused so much on the ultrasound modality. That's where it is the fastest growing modality. It's the most benign, certainly. Compared to CT, PET, SPECT, X-ray machines, et cetera, where you're constantly having to monitor, like, oh my gosh, how much dosage are they getting? Because you have to, the cumulative effect of radiation. Obviously, there's a lot of articles and papers written about that. But on ultrasound, it's just super benign, and people are trying to use it now. Clinicians are trying to find every way they can use it.
Oh, good. Sorry.
No. But just for the more they can use it to be able to identify issues and get the information for treatment, it's almost like, I think someone said when they started doing handheld ultrasound, which are really now truly we can just plug it and transduce it directly into an iPhone or whatever. It's basically going to be the stethoscope of the 21st century. So I think it's smart.
Oh yeah. There's the way I'm looking at it from one issue I had was that women's health is primarily ultrasound based. Pregnancy and even routine gynecology exams are so women's health is basically
breast ultrasound is taking off as it should, right? So
women's health is a field of medicine where ultrasound is extremely heavily used, more so than the rest of them. And so that's the reason I got an ultrasound, is because that's the data I had to solve this problem with. Obviously MRIs are a lot cleaner to look at and certainly easier for the human eye to look at, but
for sure,
I don't have MRIs of babies. I have ultrasounds of babies. So that's what I had to work with. But also I'm looking towards the future too. And I see a future where every single household has a handheld ultrasound in it. And basically anyone can just grab their ultrasound out of their medicine cabinet and then determine, do I need to take gas X, or do I need to go to the ER? And I think that would, tremendously change, medicine, because doctors wouldn't be overwhelmed with things that might not actually be an actual issue, something that might just a simple medication, over-the-counter medication might fix. Or do I need to go to the ER and then to act quickly and waiting, instead of waiting and not knowing, right? And so I think the way I say the combination of AI, which can see it, see things, these images the human eye can't, but then all these AI algorithms that we're working on, I'm sure others are working on, is going to change, how medicine is practiced. It'll be more so at home than it will you having to go to medical office every time you have some issue. You could probably weed out a lot of issues quite clearly in this future that I see. So it's kind of a combination of the past and future. That's how I ended up in the ultrasound modality, I guess.
It makes total sense. I think it's fantastic. So how did you, because you started this 2018 approximately, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's when the business got really underway, but
yeah.
But yeah, basically.
Right. So to be able to do that grind, to embrace that grind for 8 years before now we got our de novo with the FDA. Now we got stamp approval. Now we can actually become a commercial operation. Yeah. What did you do to just persevere? Because so many, I've watched interviews with some of the top founders and investors. I'm always listening to different interviews, and the one thing they always said is the companies that make it often are where the founders are just the grittiest. They just persevere, and then the timing is right in the market. Some hit market fit and the market adopts it super quick. That's very, very rare. Most it's quite a bit of a grind. What did you do to be able to grind through it when a lot of times it'd have been super easy to go, holy cow, I know I'm right, but this is just taking forever. And who knows if anyone's ever really going to accept, even though it's true and even though it's right. And even though the data's there and the science is there.
Yeah, actually, that's an interesting answer to that question. So I have dreamed of winning a Nobel Prize since I was 10 years old. Dude. And I've thought about that probably every single day since then. I probably think about that every single day. I'll be honest with you. That's I don't know what you call that. I'm sure there's a clinical term for that kind of obsessive thinking. But so it was obvious to me that solving a problem like this, predicting delivery dates of baby to prevent premature births and miscarriages. By the way, premature birth is the #1 killer of children under 5 worldwide. And so obviously having some kind of solution for that, for at least much of it, would make it a Nobel Prize worthy discovery. And so I had the personal reasons for doing it. And then of course that reason too. And I just felt like the universe was telling me something, and like, this is just what I needed to do. No matter what, I just had to, this is it. This is what I was going to do with my life, win or fail, win or lose, right? And so, I guess, sometimes people just spend the rest of their lives trying to solve a problem they never do. And you never hear about that, I guess, and you'll hear about when people spend 8 years and then it finally, wins, but you don't know how many people gave up. And I think the biggest problem, I think, is you have to have a personal passion for the issue you're talking about or working on. Because I know a lot of people go into startups because they want to just, get a quick acquisition, build up a $100 million company, get an acquisition from whoever quickly, and then move on to the next new idea that they have. And they don't have any particular passion about it per se, except to the point that this is a great idea that might make me rich. And that's fine. I mean, that's a lot of startup culture for that. But in the world of medicine and, medical devices and all that, you can't go to the market till the FDA approves you, and it takes forever to build up that kind of clinical evidence. Then you have to go to the hospitals and get the data, and then you have to get them to help you do the validation. And it's just the medical device and healthcare world is just going to be a long slog. There's no quick and easy market fit or anything, because until the FDA or Anvisa or whoever approves you, you've got exactly zero. You're not helping anybody. You're not doing anything. And so I think, for the medical world, you have to have a personal passion about the problem you're solving, or just don't even start. I just advise because it's just too hard. I mean, I still think that even though things are going so great right now, like this is just really, really, really hard, and it's not getting any easier. But you know, if it is what you feel like you need to do with your life, then that's all you need to keep going, I guess, to make a long story short.
Yeah. So obviously you have a high pain tolerance, and you have delayed gratification.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you definitely, you have to be, your self-confidence has to be borderline delusional, if not completely. Well, not in borderline delusional. Your self-confidence has to be completely delusional, because you're gonna have people telling you year after year after year, see, you're not going anywhere, you're just wasting your time, you're just wasting your money, you're wasting investors' money, or the doctors have told you this can't be done, whatever. You mean, hearing this, while you're struggling to hear a whole lot of negative Nancy's out there, also while you're trying to feel like you're doing the impossible, makes it a lot harder. You have to have I think that you just have to have a mental toughness where what other people think just fundamentally does not matter to you. And I think you have to be born that way, honestly, because I know everyone says, well, I don't care what people think, but that's that's just not true.
Yeah,
And I think to be a successful founder in general, but certainly in this thing, you just have to be born with just not caring what other people think or say, and just doing what you believe that you need to do. And I think that's the only way you can succeed in this kind of environment.
Yeah, I remember this. There's an interview, a little clip I watched, Elon Musk, and it was, I don't know, 10 years ago or something like that, or maybe sooner, more recent. And it was about SpaceX. He kept blowing up rockets.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that was like kind of on purpose. He's like, hey, from his world and trying to bring the tech startup world to aerospace, is like, we got to fail a lot faster. Like, we just have to.
Mhm.
But he talked, and the only time I've seen him actually break down, I've seen him get mad, right? But the only time I've seen him actually like get emotional was talking about his heroes that were former astronauts in some of the original space programs. And he overheard them mocking him and how he's an idiot and what he's going to do is going to fail. So the guys that he viewed as idols and that he thought would get around this, get on board, but they were so entrenched. And I don't want to mention the astronauts, but they're pretty famous ones.
Yeah.
Some of the original Apollo missions.
Yeah.
And to watch, him just break down on camera about, I know I'm right, but to have all the people that I'm doing this for them. I'm doing it there for their, people that are following over, and to have them just basically mock it and that kind of stuff. It reminds me of, kind of what stories you've talked about before, where you're like, I know this will help. I can see it. And then to have the people that should really be trying to, of course, they're going to be professionally skeptical, right? They need to be, but to not get on board, like, hey, this can really help these mothers and these families, and of course these babies, etc. I'm really doing this for you, and to get surprising amount of pushback and doubt cast around it. I mean, that's quite a bit of perseverance there, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have something I'd like to comment on the pushback, because I've learned a lot about the pushback, and that's one thing. Especially if you go into the medical device or the healthcare space, is you're going to get a lot of pushback from a lot of angles, and you're going to need all those angles to proceed. There's no way around some of them, right?
Yeah.
So if the FDA gives you pushback, then you have to come up with better evidence. There's no way around them. And so but what I've learned is you have to look at it from other people's point of view. So you have to have empathy for from their perspective. Your problems are not their problems. They have different problems. They got their own problems.
Yeah.
And what you have to do is just come up with some kind of alignment where you're in alignment in the direction that you should both be going. You agree on, and it benefits both of you. For example, the FDA and Anvisa, for example, are responsible for making sure safe and effective products reach the marketplace. And when that doesn't happen, they get the grief over it. They get called into Congress and all that. If the drug gets released that's harmful or whatever. So they have to operate from that point of view of, if we're going to release something on the public, then we need to be highly confident it is safe and effective. And this guy's a startup timeline is not our problem, right? And so, I mean, once you realize that, that makes it a lot easier too, because you don't think like, well, they just don't like me personally.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just this is just their this is their job. They're doing their job, with their problems to deal with. And then with doctors, they're on the hook. If a patient dies or some harm comes to their patient, they're the ones they're on the hook. They have to look that patient in the eye. And so I can understand why they have a need for so much evidence, sometimes it feels like overkill, I'll be honest, but they're the ones that are on the hook. So it's up to them to decide how much evidence is enough for them to treat their patients, with some new treatment or some new device, right? And then of course, then there's insurance companies, and they need to make sure that your new device isn't going to just is actually going to have an actual ROI behind it. It's actually going to prevent something that might cost them a lot more. They need evidence of that. And because that's their job, is to make sure that they're not just burning money on useless medical devices and treatments, right? And so I learned that it's not that, people just want to push back for fun. They're just negative Nancy's, and that's just fundamentally their personality. I found out quite commonly it's just because our viewpoints weren't in alignment until I understood what their viewpoint was, and started to change things to make their look at things from their viewpoint, do things from their viewpoint. And then it was easier to get yes out of people once you made it to benefit them and do what they want to do, how they wanted to do it. So that's what I've learned about medicine. It's not just pushback for fun. You just have to look at everyone's incentives and everyone, who what they're on the hook for personally. And then that explains their worldview. And then I think you can just adjust what you need to do, and everyone can work together to the same goal then at that point. So that's how I see that. I don't know if that was helpful or not, but
I think it's super helpful. It's a great perspective. I'm sure there were some clinicians, some OBGYNs, et cetera, where this just resonated like really quickly. You didn't have to do a huge amount of convincing.
Oh, yeah.
What was there any sort of commonality among the people who kind of it just clicks right away, those clinicians versus those that are, skeptic, maybe excessively skeptical?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, every single obstetrician I have ever talked to, ever in the world, has been extremely skeptical of this. In fact, I haven't had one obstetrician yet that just accepted that this would work on their patients, even though the FDA is approved, like that's still not enough for them. And
sure,
and most doctors in the case. So what we had to do is, I guess every obstetrician's from Missouri, the show me state, right? So so I mean, fair enough, right? I'm glad doctors are like that, because I think that's a good thing. So basically, where I was going with this is, since our technology relies only on ultrasound imaging and nothing else, that means an AI would give you the exact same prediction for a baby that was already born versus one that's not been born yet, because there's no difference between the images taken before or after birth. So we basically told everyone's like, we understand how skeptical you are, and what we do is we tell people, you can have 300 free scans. Just send us your births that the answers to, for like 300 of them, and you'll be able to see that we were able to predict whatever the premature births or the delivery dates of these babies that you did not expect to be high risk. And then everyone does that, because everyone's like, I got to see this for myself. It's not going to cost me anything. This is revolutionary for my field. So they all do it. And then it's 100% of doctors, once they do it, want to move towards using this. So our sales funnel is 100% end to end. We have yet to talk to a doctor anywhere in the world that's like, yeah, I mean, I believe this works, but I don't see the real value in it. Like exactly zero worldwide. And so that's an interesting. So extreme skepticism, but leads to 100% sales funnel, which is the most bizarre thing I think, and I can think of. But it's like what we're seeing so far, which is so strange. But I'm watching it in real life. So
I guess that's just kind of a normal human behavior, psychological behavior, right? It's almost like a bully. Like if you stand up to a bully, pop them in the nose, you're best friends a lot of times, right? So it's like the ones that are most skeptical.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. When they were just show me the evidence. If you can prove this to me, I will be your biggest cheerleader.
Yeah.
And so I think no one wants to stand. Like, I haven't met a doctor yet where I felt like they just wanted to just cause problems, or they just did it. They weren't No, all of 100% of them, I guarantee, are just looking out for the best interest of their patients, and how can I make sure I'm giving my patients safe and effective care too. And so that's that. So pretty much everyone gave me extremes, and still does. I still get a lot of extreme skepticism, but having the FDA and the pair paper helps. But they want to know, does this work on my ultrasound machines with my particular patients? You know, I live in rural New Mexico. Is that's different than New York City data, right? Or maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I don't know if it's not different. And so I need to make sure this works on my machines with my patients, and then I'll be your biggest cheerleader ever, right? And that's pretty much how it's gone. That's how it's going right now. So I think it's great that doctors have the level of skepticism they do, because I think I feel better being a patient knowing how rigorous they view the evidence, before making treatment decisions. So.
Yeah, and I imagine that a lot of the I wouldn't say broken promises, but more of the overhyped AI, where AI, and they've done projects. You saw that MIT thing, like 95% of AI projects have failed, and it's because they got oversold, and the venture capitalists are doing all the pitching and promised the sun and the moon and the stars, and then they come in like, oh, it's not a magic bullet, right? You can just bippity boppity get into ChatGPT, and now it's going to automate everything we need in our back office, et cetera. It's like, oh, it actually requires a bunch of work. So I wonder if there's a little bit of that. You're kind of a little bit more headwind, just because a lot of these AI companies have promised you everything, kind of salted the earth a little bit ahead of them.
Yeah, I mean, you sound like a lot of my early investors, to be honest with you, which I thought was kind of funny. So, I mean, with the things you're describing actually sounds like things I've actually heard, because we're going on year after year after year. Like I said, I need to get my T-shirt for my investors. Some that say I was, promised FDA approval 24 months ago.
That's funny.
Finally delivered on that, but I definitely owe them that T-shirt, for that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think like, ChatGPT or, or, Anthropic, how they're promising AGI every other week. I hear some kind of promise about AGI is coming, right?
Yeah,
I've been hearing that for years now. And so I don't think I'm in the same space as like the ChatGPT or
not at
Anthropic.
all.
And so my customers are
but they don't know that though. Like, how sophisticated are people, doctors? It's AI to them. It's still a black box. It's this magic thing. So you are completely different, but you get painted with the same brush. But unless they're really sophisticated, they're just like, oh, another AI company.
Well, no, you're right about that, because I'm sure I know there's a lot of companies out there trying to use AI to solve all kinds of healthcare problems, and they've been stuck in research mode forever, and quite commonly they never get approved by the FDA. So I guess doctors are tired of hearing things that are almost FDA approved. Because I'm sure we're weeks away from FDA approval. I'm sure lots of doctors been hearing that for forever, and I think they're just. But most of those products actually lead nowhere, so they're probably just tired of hearing about things that are almost FDA approved, right? So I think that's probably what kills us the most when we were pre-FDA, is because of the number of companies out there promising FDA approval, and you're competing with all these other companies that are almost to FDA, right? And so you're going to win, but of course everyone says they're going to win, and so that's the biggest headwind of all, is everyone's almost to FDA approval, and almost no one is. And the problem is, how do investors know which is which? That's the real challenge. That's the real headwind, because sometimes they just bet on who's got the slickest pitch deck, and that's you probably want the person who's actually spending more time on their AI than their pitch deck. But I don't think the VCs of Silicon Valley, necessarily would know the difference, unless they're an AI researcher themselves or a doctor themselves, right? So that's what it amounts to, I think.
Yeah, it is. It is so funny to listen to some of these VCs, that over the last few years, like, AI is gonna in the next 5 years take every radiologist job. Like I think it's Vinod Khosla from Khosla Ventures. He said that, and this was like 4 years ago, and I remember putting it up on LinkedIn. I'm like, tell me you know nothing about healthcare, but I'll tell you, if you think even something like radiology or pathology, that they're just doing cell counting, or they're just looking at images, and then they just last week, the CEO of NVIDIA comes out and like, yeah, I heard this same thing about radiologists. Now there's there's a need for more radiology than ever because of AI, because of all the things we're finding out. So it is so funny to listen to. And I can always tell if I see something on LinkedIn or some post or whatever it is, I can tell, was that written by the founder of the company or was it written by a VC or someone from the VC? And you can always tell which was written by a VC or an investor, which was written actually by someone who's kind of in the trenches. It's funny to watch.
Oh, actually, I mean, that's actually an interesting point, how the radiologists, I've been hearing radiologists going to be replaced for like 10 years at least. I've lost track of the number of years I've been hearing that statement. But I mean, I think we probably have the very first superhuman medical AI, because we can actually do what humans actually cannot do at all. A doctor not at all can predict the delivery date of a premature baby.
Exactly.
And like most of the AIs out there, they look at ultrasounds and identify, lung nodules. But the thing is, a human had to create that data of the lung nodules, because a human can also see that. Yeah. And so those AIs are never going to replace humans, because someone's got to check the AI to make sure it didn't miss something. But even us who've created an AI that a human actually cannot replace or cannot do, I know that we're not going to be replacing radiologists. I mean, it might be a decade or two. I mean, it could happen eventually. I mean, it could happen I could be replaced too by AI. Sure. So, I mean, as much as anyone can be replaced by AI, I guess I'm not. But there's no need to target radiologists specifically for that replacement, I guess, is maybe another way to put it. We're all open to that scenario. But even having created a superhuman AI, I still know that I still need the doctor's input in this, because medicine is a human-centered world. Someone's got to have bedside manner. Someone has got to explain the diagnosis to the patient in a way that's not going to be traumatizing, or explain to the patient how, what their treatment is going to do and how to do the treatment. And AI can say, well, yeah, you're going to deliver prematurely on this date, but still got to have the human, still someone's going to interact with the humans, because the humans the end result of what we're doing here. And so I don't see anywhere near where the AI can interact with the humans in the way that's actually going to work anytime in the near future. That's where I'm coming. That's why I don't think replacement is because of the human-centered nature of medicine is really my reason why the humans are hard to replace in this field.
Well, and there's always something new is going to happen.
Oh yeah.
there's something new that's going to happen, and it's going to require humans to interact, think about it, their instinct and evolution, all the et cetera, to work on it, and then they can work with the AI to learn and adapt. But think about in your company, right, Bob, is you're not actually, my perspective, you're not actually eliminating in any way, shape, or form jobs or clinicians. You're actually creating new opportunities.
Oh, absolutely.
You're saving lives. There's going to be additional care that needs to. So that's what I see happening in so many cases is everyone keeps thinking AI is some sort of reductive thing. It's taking away, right? It's eliminating. It's becoming more efficient, because more efficient, we can eliminate these people. We can eliminate these tasks. I'm like, sometimes that's true. Yeah. And normally that's like a log jam. But when you release the river and it goes out, you're creating more opportunities, more farmland, more hydroelectric power. There's new opportunities that are created from it. And I think that's what's so exciting, at least for me, about what you're doing. It's certainly you're solving a problem and reducing inefficiency and you're saving lives, but you're actually creating more opportunity, obviously first for the families. That's paramount. But it also is creating a lot more opportunities for those organizations. And I think if I were to give free advice to the AI companies and their marketing people, say, quit with this destruction. They take this angle of we're destroying the old, we're getting rid of things. And that's terrifying. There's no hope. Like when people think of AI, do a little Rorschach test, ink blot, except it's not ink blot. When I say AI, do you think hope or fear? And most people go fear. Why? Is there anything about the AI that's scary? No, it's how people have promoted it and talking about it, and they're pushing it. And in healthcare, about anything, AI should be marketed in messages as it's bringing hope, not destruction and fear and slashing and burning. But so much of it, that's the sentiment that comes across. And so what I love about your company, Ultrasound AI, is certainly it's recognizing some inefficiencies and blocks, and it's using existing scans. It's not net new things to say we're going to save lives, but now we're creating really real opportunity. And so you're already doing that kind of hope. You're like the hope AI versus the fear based.
Yeah, it was. Well, I mean, we're actually, you're right, because we're able to identify women that are at risk who would not have been known to be at risk. So this is actually probably creating a lot more jobs in medicine than reducing. And it's also, that's how it's saving lives, is by identifying cases that you would not have even known were an issue. And so that's, I mean, that, I think that you're right about the hope AI, because when you think about it, there's just there's no downside to the saving the lives of mothers and babies. No one's going to argue against that. No one's going to argue against identifying premature births and miscarriages. Like there's just no, it's just there's only a positive angle to this. There's really no downside for anyone in this whole scenario that we're doing. And I think that's lucky for us, obviously, because there's plenty of scenarios you could be in where there's definitely some downside to it, but I don't think we're in one of them. So I agree. I appreciate the situation too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm super bullish on what you're doing. Is there anything else? This has been great. I know we got to wrap up, but is there anything we haven't covered that we need to cover?
I mean, I don't know that we need to cover, but if people are wondering, we are currently getting ready to do a Series A, obviously, since now we got the de novo. So if anyone is interested in that in some way, shape, or form, I'd love to talk to you. But I'd say that'd be about it, though.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to put, so anyone who wants to learn about ultrasound AI, which everybody should, because it's fantastic. It's one of the coolest. I've known Bob for a long time. We've been talking for a long time. And besides him and his investors and his wife and family, I don't think anyone's been more excited when they got the approval with the FDA than me, because I've been hearing about it for so long and just almost hopes and prayers in it. But we're going to put a link to Bob's company in the show notes. We're going to have a link to Bob on LinkedIn as well. He's a fascinating follow. So people can do that. And I encourage anyone that has any questions to reach out to Bob as well. And we'll put your contact information in the notes as well. So Bob, again, a real pleasure. It's always great talking to you, but I appreciate coming on, spend about an hour with us on the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me. This is a lot of fun.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.